And in that role, she will, as Tom says now, attend the Cabinet. So congratulations on the new job.
Thank you very much.
Caroline, you're presumably part of making the government look more like the country. You're a woman who wasn't privately educated. But in terms of actually doing that to the rest of the government, the Prime Minister didn't really achieve that, did she?
Oh, you know, I think she really achieved that. Go and look at our Whip's office, where we've got more women than ever before. And I remember coming in 2010 and looking at a Whip's office that was really male.
Why can't we have 50-50 women in the Cabinet?
Well, we're headed in the right direction. We've made progress. There are 2 more women attending Cabinet. There are many more women...
There aren't any more women in the Cabinet. There are lots of other countries in the world. Even the Scottish Government has a policy of 50-50 men, women in the Cabinet. Surely it's possible.
We're working at it, but you have to remember we started from a really low base of women even elected, and I think the PM's doing a fantastic job of encouraging more women to come forward, more younger women as well, from more diverse backgrounds. And you know, it's a work in progress, but we are absolutely headed in the right direction. We've done a fantastic job in getting more BAME Conservative members elected, and some of them have got great jobs, putting them at the heart of our policy making and in central office. People like Kemi Badenoch, who went to the same university as I did, the University of Sussex, hardly a breeding ground for Tory politicians.
But in the country, there are about 14% non-white British citizens. In the government, it's about 3%. That's not very representative, is it?
We're working at it. As I've said, we have a great track record over the last few years of attracting more people to come and stand for us in Parliament. And you can't put people in the government if they haven't yet been elected. And our messages, with people like Nuzgani going into the Whip's office, Kemi doing the job that she's doing within central office, we're working hard to make sure that those bright, young women from diverse backgrounds have a chance. And you know, it's a process, isn't it? We're all climbing up the ladder. I think the Cabinet is looking better than it was. I've always advocated more women in Parliament, and the last debate I did was about getting more women to stand for politics, and you know, that really matters.
So the big news this morning is the idea that the Justice Secretary may take a judicial review against the release of the serial sex attacker John Worboys. What's your view on that? Should the Justice Minister himself be taking judicial reviews against this kind of decision?
We all look at the victims of war boys and want them to get the support that they need and want them to see that justice is being done. I think it's absolutely right that David Gauke is looking at a judicial review. None of us feel happy with the parole board decision. This is a man who served less than 10 years. And it's a horrific number of victims. So I want to see something happen.
Is that we can't see the parole board's decision. We can't see their reasoning because it can't be published. But the government could change that at a stroke and allow them to publish it, should they?
Well, the Justice Secretary is reviewing the process, and I think that's really important because actually we want people to have confidence. We really do. Our justice system is a very old one and a very proud one. Let's not undermine it. Let's make sure that we get the right decisions in place.
Well, let's get on to your own brief now, your new brief on immigration. This means you inherit the target of reducing net migration to the tens of thousands, i.e. under 100,000. That's something that the last 5 immigration ministers have failed to achieve. Are you going to do it?
The last 5 immigration ministers have now seen the trajectory headed in the right direction. It's going downwards. The figures that we saw back in the summer show that it has dropped significantly.
Significantly. It has dropped slightly. The figure is 14,000 lower than when you came to power in 2010, with overall net migration at 244,000.
But we want to make sure that this is a Britain that is open for business, that the brightest and the best can come here to work and study. We're listening to the universities and we're listening to business via the Migration Advisory Committee.
Well, that's interesting. So if you want to say we're open to business and the brightest and the best should come here, why have this target of reducing net migration to under 100,000? There are lots of cabinet ministers who would like to get rid of it. You could have left it out of the 2017 manifesto and got rid of quite a headache.
Well, you know, we had a referendum in 2016 which sent us a very clear message that people want to see that target remain. They want to see us reducing immigration to sustainable levels, and we're doing exactly that. You're right, it was there in the manifesto, so that is the direction of travel.
But immigration from outside the EU, so you'll tell us, of course, once we leave the European Union, then everything will change with freedom of movement of people coming from EU countries. But net migration from outside the EU, which you have complete control over now, it's over 100,000 in and of itself. Why hasn't that been tackled in the 7 years that this has now been a target?
Well, we are tackling it, and we're tackling it via the banking measures that you will have heard about earlier this week, working with banks to make sure that those who hold bank accounts and aren't here legally have those frozen and closed if necessary. And I think that's really important. We've got a raft of measures, but the current Home Secretary, the previous Home Secretary have been very clear on this. We are going to get these numbers down and do it in a manageable and sustained way.
But it's not what business want, is it? I mean, the Tory mayor of the West Midlands, Andy Street, who, as you know, used to be the boss of John Lewis, says the target should be more like 150,000 so that business can attract people with the skills that they need. George Osborne has described a target as economically illiterate because we actually need higher migration than that.
Which is why we're listening to the Migration Advisory Committee. They're going to be reporting in September, which is going to give us a solid expert economist's view on what migration levels should be. But as I've said, it was there in the manifesto. We are determined to head in that direction and bring immigration down to a sustainable level.
So your Migration Advisory Committee, if they come to you and say, well, actually, and somebody like Andy Street's right, we need more like 150,000 coming, will you then change? Because this was a manifesto promise to get it under 100,000, so there's not very much you can do if they come to you and say, actually, you got that wrong. We need more migration to make the economy work.
I'm not going to prejudge the view of expert economists. They're not reporting until September. We've asked them for their view. And
but I'm asking you what you're going to do with their view, because you're stuck with this manifesto promise saying of reducing it to the tens of thousands. So there's not very much you can do if they come out opposed to that.
And you're telling somebody who's been in the job less than a week that she should make a decision on the hoof in a television studio. Not a chance. What I think is important for me to do is to listen to the experts and make sure that we come up with a direction of travel that satisfies those who voted leave in the 2016 referendum, that satisfies business, that makes sure that universities like the brilliant Russell Group University, the University of Southampton, on the edge of my constituency, can still attract the brightest and best students. And, you know, this is a really complicated, difficult area.
So you mentioned students and the need to attract the brightest of them. Why are student figures, the numbers of students coming to study in Britain, why are they included in the net migration figures? I mean, you could really help yourself out pretty quickly by taking students out of that. Just about every member of the cabinet wants students removed from the migration figures. Why are they there?
So the ONS determine that students should be included because they're here for more than 12 months. And because of that, we have to include them and make sure that we have the public services that are going to support those students. We know the vast majority of them go home at the end of their term of study, as they rightly should, but it's really important that we look at this in the round, work with the Migration Advisory Committee, get the right answers. But I certainly
So you're happy about students being included in the migration figures?
I'm happy that we've got 24% more international students coming to our best universities than we had back in 2010. I'm happy that we're attracting a great calibre of student to come here. I'm equally happy that the former Home Secretary, our Prime Minister, cracked down on bogus colleges and we saw them close, because actually we want bright, brilliant students to come here and learn.
All right. Well, thank you very much for that, Caroline Nokes. I'm just going to turn back to our panel and get your assessment on that. Steve, you can't envy the new immigration minister being stuck with a promise to reduce migration to a level that no other Tory minister has been able to do.
No, with all respect, I don't envy you with that target, and I hope, I don't know what your private view is, but I know most cabinet ministers don't want student numbers to be part of the total figure, and that this is Theresa May alone who is still pressing this. I've just been doing a series about David Cameron. He made a series of targets which were never met, as you said in the interview. Good luck with it. Lots of people I meet now who were pro-Brexit, like farmers, are pleading, as you'll know, for cheap labour from Eastern Europe to continue, and they don't want to fill in loads more forms to get them. So there's a lot of talk about NIMBY, free movement, and I think you've got a very tough brief.
Julie, is it right to have a target that net migration should be reduced below 100,000? Do you think that's... Is it important to the public that it's reduced?
Well, no, I mean, I do find it quite bizarre they're still sticking to a target they've never really done anything to try and actually reach. I mean, certainly even the immigration levels they're able to control under Cameron's, or the coalition government, and under the government on his own. Even the numbers outside of the EU, which they can control completely, they never even came close. They were more more than doubled, at 230,000 or something. But I do find it strange, this row about students shouldn't be. You know, if you're living in the country for 3-4 years, you need somewhere to live. You'll be getting buses, getting trains. You might have somewhere to park your car. You might need to go to hospital. You might need to go to the GP. I mean, it's like the idea that these people somehow don't exist because they're not here permanently. And as we know, some of them do stay permanently. I think it's ridiculous. But we need to have a sensible debate. Brexit was not about ending immigration. Of course it wasn't. It was about us, like virtually every other country in the world, choosing who gets to come here. If you are well qualified, you've got a skill that we need, we'd love to have you. Come on in, the water's lovely. If, however, we just want to bring in some cheap labour, which is basically going to be subsidised by the taxpayer with their housing benefit and everything else, to do jobs which simply aren't paid enough, then no, I don't think we should. I think if it comes to farmers and the like, we should just be paying more for some of our produce.
Quick thought, Tom?
Well, that is exactly why I think Judith has given quite a good explanation why the 100,000 target was set up and should probably stay, because if there isn't a target, then cheap labour will continue to flow in because it's the easiest thing for business to do. If you're limited how many we can bring in, then you just might turn to the indigenous British population, whoever they are, and start skilling them up to do perfectly decent jobs, which they are perfectly capable of doing.
OK, well, thanks for that. Our panel are going to stay with us throughout the programme. Thank you very much.